No, I agree. We're going to get started. My name is Hannah Beaudry. I'm program coordinator at the Center for Ethics and Society at Saint Anselm College. On behalf of myself and the Center's executive director, Max Latona, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, I'd like to thank all of you for coming to today's program on maximizing the mentor-mentee relationship. This is the second session of the Center's Women of Influence series, which is devoted to topics relating to women's success in business and government. The Center's mission is to use research, education, dialogue, and collaboration to help communities and organizations throughout New Hampshire address the important ethical issues that they face. We believe that mentorship is a key area of education and collaboration that has a positive impact on professional and personal development, especially for women in the workplace. All of our panelists in the first session of this series on March 1st expressed gratitude to their mentors who helped them launch and grow their careers. So I'm excited to hear what today's panelists have to say. I want to thank Connie Rochadowski, who's here in the front row, who's on the Center's advisory board, Dr. Gina Frutos-Benz of the Economics and Business Department, back over there, and today's moderator, Linda Johnson, for their leadership on this series. I also want to thank both the Women in Business Club and the Career Development Center for their help promoting this program. If you're a current student or alum, the Career Development Center is your go-to resource for career exploration and professional development. You can email careers@anselm.edu to connect with their team of career advisors who can consult with you on your journey. And finally, thank you to our media sponsor, New Hampshire Business Review, for spreading the word about this series. This event is part of the Ethics and Governance Forum at the Center for Ethics. Funding for the forum comes from a $2 million endowment created by the New Hampshire Secretary of State's office and the Center for Public Responsibility and Corporate Citizenship, awarded to Saint Anselm College in 2013. The endowment was created from a settlement reached between the New Hampshire Securities Bureau and Tyco International in 2002, and it is administered by the University of New Hampshire Foundation. Today's program will begin with a moderated panel discussion, followed by Q&A. After that, we invite everyone to stay for networking and refreshments. And I also want to tell you that this event is being recorded. We have an owl here in the front of the room, so just keep that in mind. I will now ask Ranji Matthews and Mary Duffy to introduce today's panelists. Ranji is a junior business major and human resources minor here at the college. She is a student intern at the Center for Ethics and a member of the Women in Business Club. Mary Duffy is a senior communication major and graphic design minor. In addition to working at the Center for Ethics, she sings in the college's a cappella group called Live. Mary.
I'm happy to introduce three of the panelists for tonight's program. Angie Lane serves as the executive director of the Red River Theaters, a nonprofit independent cinema in Concord. A graduate of the University of New Hampshire with a bachelor's degree in communications, Angie brings significant experience in development, community relations, event creation, management, and marketing. Past roles include stints with the New Hampshire Public Radio, the Concord Monitor, Silver Tech, and Company C. Angie served as a director of the New England Foundation for the Arts, the Greater Concord Chamber of Commerce, and Creative Arts. She likewise served on advisory boards of the Curtin Museum of Art and the Concord Coalition. In 2016, Angie was named Concord Young Professional of the Year, and in 2018 was honored as a part of the union's 40 Under 40 initiative. Angie grew up in Pembroke, New Hampshire, and currently lives in Manchester with her partner Will, bonus son Zeke, and the cat of her dreams, Finn. Sara Bee Pichette is an intermediary sales and business development senior associate at Impax Asset Management, a specialty asset manager focused on the transition to a more sustainable economy in Portsmouth. Sara has been in the financial services industry for almost a decade and holds certified private wealth advisory and chartered SRI counselor professional designations. Sara is a proud Manchester West High School grad who returned home after earning her degree at the University of Colorado at Boulder and living in Denver and Nashville, and enjoys being active in the Manchester community. She serves on the board of directors of Manchester Police Athletic League and Mill Falls Charter School. She also coached a youth girls lacrosse team through the Boys and Girls Club of Manchester. Sara graduated from the Manchester Chambers Leadership Greater Manchester program in 2020 and received a Good Samaritan Award from the Pastoral Counseling Services in 2020. Sara and her husband Neil live in the North End of their Dunbar.
Yeah.
And dog Simba. They enjoy spending time outdoors, skiing, biking, and boating. Laura Simoes serves as the executive director at the Loeb School of Communications. Laura brings a strong background in strategic communications and has managed outreach, crisis aversion, and public policy campaigns for nonprofits, corporations, and local, state, and federal government. She is a former staff member for the U.S. Senator Jane Shaheen at the Episcopal Church of New Hampshire and the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. She has a BS in Communications, an MBA, and is a candidate for a PhD in Applied Linguistics, Communication, and Language. Laura has served as an adjunct professor in Communications at Southern New Hampshire University. She is a former selectman for a town of 6,000, a former commissioner on human rights for the state of New Hampshire, as well as a current and former leader on the statewide nonprofit board of directors. Mary will now introduce the
Katie Benway Yerkes is a certified life coach, speaker, and author. Over the course of 13 years, Katie has worked with more than 11,000 individuals one-on-one and in small group settings, exploring the deepest human experiences, including death, grief, trauma, and life-altering change. Katie created Intrepid 11 LLC in 2010 and began meeting with clients face-to-face at her office in Concord, New Hampshire. As a volunteer, Katie co-founded and served as board president of the Manchester Young Professional Network, served as a board member and board president of the YWCA of Greater Manchester, and was a Big Sister for 10 years through Big Brothers Big Sisters. Katie was named 2010 Mentor of the Year by Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Manchester and received a Good Samaritan Award from Pastoral Counseling Services in Manchester, New Hampshire. Was named to the Union Leaders 40 Under 40 list in 2006 and was named a Rising Star by Business New Hampshire magazine. Attorney Linda Johnson is a director with the law firm McLane Middleton Professional Association, where she serves as vice chair of the firm's educational law group and chair emeritus of the firm's diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. She is recognized as a national authority on student and campus safety issues, risk management, crisis response, employment law, and independent school law issues. Linda has also been named as a leading labor and employment law attorney by Business New Hampshire magazine. She is AB rated by Martindale Hubble, which is the highest rating for legal ethics and services. Linda is the chair of the board of trustees of the New Hampshire Women's Foundation. Linda was the first woman to ever serve as officer of the NH Bar Association. Among other awards, she has been selected as an outstanding businesswoman of New Hampshire and part of the Granite State Most Influential Business Leaders by New Hampshire Business Review. Please join me in welcoming her panel.
Well, thank you for that introduction. And as you can see from this panel of amazing women, you are in for a treat today. I've had the benefit of speaking to them beforehand. And although you can see their backgrounds are quite diverse of what they're involved in, communication, the arts, you know, an author, economics and investment, I saw a lot of similarities. And part of it has to do with their passion for their work and the passion for people. And also their interest in making an impact on the world around them. And perhaps a byproduct of their interest in it, that they are actually making that impact on their communities, those around them. I had read before tonight a Harvard Business Review article, and we're here to talk about mentorship and the role that mentorship has had in their lives in helping to mold the path of their careers. And this Harvard Business Review article said people with mentors perform better, advance in their careers faster, and even experience more work-life satisfaction, despite all the benefits. And even though 76% of working professionals believe that a mentor is important to growth, more than 54% do not have such a relationship. And so I think that sets the tone for this. For many of you who are starting your careers, on the root of your careers, what is that role to you, both as a mentor and a mentee? So I did want to start off by asking you, how many in this room has had the benefit of a mentor to help guide you either through college or through your career. Okay, that's a good number. Now, how many of you have had the opportunity to serve as a mentor for other people? Okay. Oh, that's a great number. So I'm so glad that we have both of that here. Ironically, at this time at McLane Middleton Law Firm, I'm writing our guidebook on the mentor-mentee relationship for both the mentor and the mentees to get the most out of that. And so as part of that, I look to say, what is the definition of mentoring as it relates to what we're talking about tonight and what I'm doing with the firm? And what I came up with is that mentoring is a process through which an individual offers professional expertise as well as support and guidance to a less experienced colleague. A mentor often serves many roles, including teacher, counselor, and advocate to a protege. Mentoring should result in a mutually beneficial professional relationship over time. And I know our focus at our firm is to show this is one of the many ways we help associates within the firm that we can support them to achieve both professional and career development, as well as personal job and life satisfaction. And so, mentoring may work with different people and have different experiences. Not all mentees have the same needs. Where are you in your career? Are you coming out? Are you more experienced in what's going on? So what I plan to do for the hour that we have of the discussion with our panelists is I'm going to pitch some questions out to these ladies, and we're going to have a conversation. So, we sort of had a conversation before of things they'd like to do. And to start us off, I also read, again, I think this was from a Harvard Business Review article, that in today's professional service firms, associates can no longer just expect to be assigned a mentor. They also have to learn how to attract one. And they gave the case example of McKinsey and Company that encourages associates to build their own McKinsey. It's a process of very informal. Members of the firms are counseled to say, surround yourself with your subordinates, your peers, and your partners who you naturally gravitate to because of your chemistry, interests, and goals. This isn't about getting a promotion. This is about developing your potential as a professional and as a human being. And if you want a mentor, start acting like you do, and you will eventually surround yourself surrounded by people who want to help you on that journey. And in fact, these colleagues will be part of your personal advisory board. Now, coincidentally, I just read that, yesterday. And my meeting of Sara Bee Pichette, I couldn't remember if we first met because we both repelled 20 stories, or if it was because we met because she asked me to be part of her advisory board. So Sara, I would love for you to share what I thought was just an amazing, inspiring story of what happened when you first came into Manchester and created your own board.
Definitely. Well, nice to be here with you all. Thanks for coming. So excited to be a part of this. So thanks for the opportunity, Linda. So as you heard, I grew up here in Manchester. I went to West High School and I went to Colorado for school. And when I came back, I got into the financial services industry and was in the process of building a book of business. And so my job was to get involved in the community and to meet folks, which is something I really enjoy doing. So it came pretty naturally, but in putting myself in situations, rappelling down buildings and volunteering for boards, getting involved in Rotary clubs, I met some really great people. And it was my business partner who encouraged me to sort of formalize those relationships and gave me this idea of forming a personal advisory board. So I was lucky, like I said, to be connected to attorneys and real estate agents, nonprofit leaders, and other business owners. And I approached probably 15 or so people who I really respected and who I saw as being really successful in both their personal and professional lives. And I asked them to be a part of my personal advisory board. I did get some no's, which is interesting, and we can definitely talk about that. It's scary to ask, right? But I do think that that's something that differentiates, someone who you admire as a role model and a coach to someone who's actually a mentor. I think it's important that they know that they are serving as a mentor to you to really get the benefits of it. And so, we can certainly go into more detail about the actual process, Linda, but just to give you kind of overview is I invited these people to a formal dinner where I had the opportunity to get them all together. Some of them knew each other, some of them didn't, so that was really fun. And I put together a formal presentation of what I was trying to accomplish in my business, and asked them for advice. And so it gave me the chance to explain, what I was doing professionally, and it really gave me the opportunity to formally ask for advice. So following that meeting, I met with each of them personally, where we went into a bit more depth of, my business plan and the questions that I had, but it was through that experience that they were able to offer their advice, how they found success, again, both personally and professionally. And it's been a really valuable experience. I mean, Linda is one of my favorite people, and gives me many opportunities to do fun things like this. And so I really encourage you to think about people in your life that you could approach to ask to do the same for you.
And I will say, part of that kind of mentorship, mentee, or personal advisor board does create a mutually fulfilling relationship on both sides. I sometimes say to Sarah, I learn as much from you as you may learn from me, even though we're different in our career. And it also allows you that kind of like level of intimacy in the sense of getting to know a person. I just saw she has a 1-year-old daughter, and she had her on skis, and I'm like, oh my God, that's but the fact of your support from one another, both professionally and what she's doing when she moved to Impax Asset Management, I'm like, oh my God, that's so to call her up and say, congratulations, that's such a great place for you to move on to, and create a lifelong relationship where you're mutually interested in each other. And I thought the diversity of her panel was amazing. It was people realistic, not necessarily involved in her industry, people involved in the business community and the nonprofit community and diversity. And now, Katie, in a similar vein, when you and I spoke, you spoke about the experience when you were only 20 years old, in the business world, and Connie Wachowski said, hey, I would like to be on the board of Northeast Delta Dental. 28 years old, usually you're in your 50s and you're asked to be on the board. And what that you identified for me, that what that did for you was kind of give you your quest on self-awareness. And can you tie those two together so you can understand how what Connie did gave you this theme of self-awareness in your life?
Sure. Hi, I'm Katie, and I can only be thoughtful about self-awareness because I'm 43 and I've been through some stuff now. But my advice is to cultivate self-awareness and engage in relationships and activities that help you understand who you are, what in you want to work on, heal, hone, polish, what you should embrace about yourself. So one of the things I love about mentors and pulling people like that into your life is that, so when Connie approached me to be on the board at Northeast Delta Dental, so I was 28 years old. I was the marketing manager for the city of Manchester, doing economic development marketing. And absolutely, like, boards, and still often boards today, are like white, retired, wealthy men, frankly. And so to be asked to, I wasn't even married yet, I didn't have kids yet. And I was really flattered and I was really nervous. And what I would say about that, and I can see that in hindsight, but I sort of saw it as I came up on the board. I was on the board for 9 years and ended up chairing the board for a couple of years and still serve on an advisory committee for them. But Connie's view of me helped me see myself and take myself in. And so at that time, I absolutely had my head down. I was late 20s, female, paying my dues in a very, I was working at City Hall in Manchester, so that's a whole system, system with a capital S. And so I didn't see myself, I saw myself as very much paying dues. And so that, to have someone else see me as a thought leader, as someone who could make a contribution at that level, that was really huge. And I remember joining the board and having my first few meetings and being really nervous and terrified. I found my feet pretty quickly, but what I take from that, and what I shared with Linda, and what I'd love to share with you, is when you allow people to come into your life and sort of present their view of you, or present you with opportunities, that will show you who you are in a way that you may not be ready to take in for whatever reason. Maybe you don't know that part of you yet. Maybe you don't realize you come off that well. Maybe you know, you've got insecurities and all your loops running that tell you you're whatever you're not. And so by the time I finished that tenure and got to know Connie really well, I feel like the person that she saw in me, or sort of like the part of me that she saw, really came to life. And not only did it come to life, I became aware of it and I integrated it. Like, I am that person. I still am that person, which I do think is the self-awareness process of having yourself reflected back to you and deciding what you want to integrate, embrace, and become. We all have those choices. So yeah, that's my story about that.
I should have said to all of you panelists that although I'm pitching a question immediately to one person, if you want to have any comments about that topic, feel free to raise your hand. But I'll keep going. So moving to Angie, it's similar to this vein that we're talking about you spoke a lot about when people see the potential before you see it in yourself.
Yeah.
And the power of mentorship in that realm. And if you could elaborate a bit on that.
Sure. So I've served as the executive director for Red River Theaters. It's a movie theater. It's a pretty cool gig, right? For 6 years. And I always said it was like my first big gig. I'd never managed people. I'd never managed such a big budget. I really walked in very naive. I think if I knew what I was getting into, I probably would never have taken the job. But I think what's so interesting is that I think anybody can be a leader. I think sometimes, I don't think I was a leader until I got that position. Because I think you meet the moment sometimes and you just don't know what's inside you. And what you were saying, like, there's so many things you haven't even developed or discovered about yourself. And that's the best part. I mean, we were just talking about getting older is awesome because you care less, at least for me, I care less about what people necessarily think of me. And folks that I respected and admire, they saw me as a leader before I was one. And that really motivated me to grow on my own, like ask as many questions. And, you know, I just promised myself that I wasn't going to pretend that I knew anything. Because I knew nothing. I read a lot of articles, I asked a lot of questions, had a lot of meetings and coffee with people that have walked that path and just ask them. Sometimes they give really great advice. Sometimes they give like advice that you're like, that's not for me. And most of all, I think they give the best lessons are from mistakes, from the things that you trip up on. But it was really wonderful to be seen that way. And I think I shared too, I grew up here in New Hampshire as the only like non-white person in my high school. And so for me, like fitting in and disappearing was like how I wanted to survive. And then I grew up and realized like everything that is different about me is my superpower. And so whatever thing you think is weird about you, that's probably something that you have over everybody else. So I think when other people recognize that and say, wow, like that thing about you is actually really cool and we want to give you this opportunity. So I just think the more you are yourself, the more that you are comfortable, the more that you explore the things that excite you, people will recognize that. And I mean, I was really lucky to have people that said, yeah, we think you can do this. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do it and not tell them I'm not sure what I'm doing. So I think that it's like being seen on any level, whether it's you're being seen as just a person or a leader, it's really powerful, right? Someone recognizes like that you're really funny or that you have a particular skill set that you didn't think was important. It makes you unique. And I think don't hide that because someone will see that and appreciate it. And hopefully you'll get to like something you love something.
And I think it's like all these things are sort of weaving into each other, the self-awareness, the having somebody else recognize in you. I think you said somebody said to you, well, you're the emotional leader.
Yeah.
And where you thought that could have been a deficit, and they were commenting it in a positive way.
Yeah.
That you were authentic and you're emotional and you're passionate. And that propelled people to support you and to want to do it. But it took an outside sort of like informal mentor to put that out for you.
Absolutely, because I think that for me, I always thought being an emotional person was the downside. And sometimes it is. But I do know that like if I'm an empathetic person and I'm able to hopefully be
be empathetic with the people I work with, be able to understand people on an emotional level. And yeah, absolutely. And it was validating to me for my board chair at the time to recognize that, because the whole time I was like, keep it together. And don't freak out. And now I'm just like, I describe myself as uncontained. Like that. I think I try to be myself most of the time. There's appropriate times to not to pull back a little, but yeah, that was really something that changed how I looked at myself, because I always thought of it as a downside.
True story. So, and now I'm talking to Laura. Laura, when you and I spoke, you talked about the two-way street, and you had some thoughts on what makes a strong mentor, and on what a mentee should give back to a mentor. And again, in my guidebook for McLane that's in draft, one of my chapters is you've been assigned a mentee. Now, chapter for the mentees is like, I'm ready to be a mentee. So I thought those were quite a good guide into your thoughts on what it takes to be a strong mentor and from the mentee.
So one of the real privileges of being the oldest person sitting here among my colleagues is that I've had the pleasure of being.
Because I'm standing.
I've had the pleasure and sometimes the displeasure of being both a mentor and a mentee. And so I'm delighted to sort of claiming my position here as a senior leader, and I'm loving it. You know, I think that as a mentor, some of the things that I've learned over time are that it's really important to understand your mentee's strengths. Not everybody is going to be like you or share the same strengths. You know, as Angie was saying, you know, we each, as we go through our careers, we identify our style of leadership and management, and sometimes it doesn't work for other people. And so being clear that this is that person's strengths, this is what this person that you're working with brings to the table, and either helping them to live into those strengths or helping them identify them, holding up a mirror a bit and helping them to understand who they are, but not hoping or expecting or working for them to become more like you, because that's not what it's about. I will also say that I think a lot of what you're going to hear today, and maybe what you've learned as you've read or been in mentoring relationships, is that the mentors are giving everything and the mentee has very little to give. And I'm here to tell you, it is absolutely a two-way street. And it's really important, I think, to think about what a mentee has to offer. And I'll tell you, I think there may be three things just that you should consider. One of the things that you have to offer is that you should be grateful and you should express that gratitude. And sometimes that comes in the form of my favorite thing, which is a personal handwritten card, but it could be anything. Making sure that when you meet other people in the industry, if you're in a shared industry, that you comment on how much you appreciate so-and-so's support of you as a mentor. Making sure that if you're within the same organization, that you're lifting up that person's support and name to his or her colleagues and supervisors. I think it's also important to keep us updated. You're going to go through lots of exciting adventures in your career. And even if we're no longer in a formal way connected, I want to hear about your milestones, your accomplishments, sometimes your defeats, like, oh man, remember that thing we talked about? It didn't work. And here's what happened. I want to know what you're doing, how things are going for you. So keep me updated. You know, you're teaching your kid how to ski. I love that. You know, I'd love to learn that and to know that that's happening. She's incredible. And then I think the other thing is to offer feedback. You know, not everyone who's a mentor gets it right all the time. And when you're in a relationship, I mean, I'm not here to tell you about all the relationships that you're in and offer advice on that. That's not my role. But I think it's important in every relationship to be able to offer feedback, but to know that it's a safe place to do that. And the best time to establish that is at the beginning of a relationship. It's not the only time. I mean, you can be down the road with a mentor and say, hey, I'd like to think about how I could offer you feedback. The way that I might approach it, I'm a communications person, so I think about this stuff all the time, and that's my loop, is maybe to say at the beginning of an opportunity with a mentor, I'd like to be able to share with you what is helpful about what you offer and what is less helpful. Would you be open to that? And if a potential mentor says, I'm not really comfortable with that, or they may not even be honest and say that to you, but you get a vibe of like, they're not gonna be cool with feedback, you can judge whether or not that's gonna be a fit for you. Or, going into it, it's not a place where you can say, this doesn't work for me. And it's good to know that early on. As a mentor, we need to be open to that kind of feedback. I want to know if what I have suggested makes you feel comfortable, makes you feel empowered, gives you ideas about places to go next. Because if it doesn't, I don't want to offer that kind of advice. I want to shift and pivot and find another way to support you. But also so that the next time I'm mentoring someone, I don't assume that that's the right way to proceed. Everybody's different. Every approach is different for everybody. But generally, if you said to me as your mentor, when you get super involved, this is probably something one of my kids would say to me, when you get super involved and you send me talking points about the interview I had today, I just got this feedback on my face. About the interview I had today with a grad school supervisor, I really appreciate that you're thinking of me in such a warm and loving way. This is what he should have said. He didn't say that. Here's one. But I didn't use your talking points because it has to be authentically me. Like, I'm the one who's doing this task. I'm going to be the one working in this lab. I need to show them who I am from the start. That was really great feedback for me. Now I know that maybe talking points are welcome, but that kind of affirming, like, wow, that sounds like you did a great job with that interview. I hope it works out for you. Let's keep me informed, keep me, keep in touch. But you have to be open to that kind of feedback always. So those are the things I think that you as mentees give to mentors, appreciation, feedback, and, a sense of what works for you.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, not every mentee has the same needs. And so an important part at the outset of a mentor-mentee relationship is to figure out what is it the mentee does need. And you had the concept of creating a job description. So what was that idea?
Okay, well, this is a new idea and I got it from Sara. So,
but it's more bullet points.
Sure.
I'm kidding.
You know what? It would look good in bullet.
It would. That's all I have to talk about.
All day long. But when Sara we had a prep call for today with Linda, and Sara was talking about this board of directors, and it sort of had me shift my thinking around how to approach some of these relationships from a more business perspective. And if you were to think about entering a new relationship, maybe with an employer, or if you were the employer, in this case as a mentee, right? You're choosing a mentor. Think about a job description for what you would be looking for in that mentor. What kinds of things do you need? What are you looking for support around? And any good job description has those kind of measurables, right? And so be really specific. Like, for example, I expect my mentor, I'm not saying you have to share this with the mentor, but this helps you guide your conversation. It's like talking points. But to say, I expect my mentor to take me to 3 networking events in the next year where I will be introduced to leaders in my field. Or other kinds of measurables, but then finding ways to hold that mentor accountable. Like, hey, are you going to any great events next week? Or I saw on the calendar that the BIA annual dinner is next week. Are you planning to go? It's $150 a ticket. Does your firm have any extra tickets? Could you share one? Could I come as your guest? If I purchase a ticket, could I find a way to sit with you? Could you introduce me to people? Be bold and ask for real tangible things. The other thing is maybe to ask for references, which you would do in a job search, both as a potential employee and as an employer. If this person says, oh, I'm a mentor all the time in the field of communications, maybe find out, like, well, that's great. Who have you worked with before? And then see if you can find a way to talk to that person about whether or not it was a good experience and learn whether or not it's going to be a fit for you early on.
That's great.
Can I piggyback off of that? 'Cause I was just thinking. And so one of the things I mentioned on our call was, I think it's really important to stay discerning, because as potentially as like a younger person Or if you're in a space where you feel like, oh, I'm really honored this person has approached me, staying discerning is really important. So I pull people into my life when I like their outcome. There are a lot of people who will try to help you or come alongside you, and not in a nefarious way, maybe a genuine, open-hearted way, but you don't want their outcome. And I've, in my life over the last handful of years, been really thoughtful and clear that, and part of this is I'm a mom, I have kids, I'm running a business, I don't have a lot of time to burn. And so the time I spend with people, I want it to be like potent. And I want to make sure that I want their outcome. So when I was probably like early 30s, there was a man in business, a successful man in business, who had said, Katie, I want to mentor you. And I was really flattered and honored. And I was like, yeah. Wasn't discerning. And that was fine. I'm not being self-critical. I was just really honored. And we began those meetings and it wasn't good. And what I realized as I sat and listened to him was that I didn't want his outcome at all. So we weren't in the same industries, but he was an absolute committed workaholic. He barely saw his family. He did not value his relationship with his children or his wife. There were a lot of other things you just pick up really easily in a conversation. And I remember sort of shrinking. I was sitting at a conference room table with him, just us in a room. And I remember shrinking, thinking like, this doesn't resonate with me. This is not the person that I want to be. I don't want this outcome. He's not a bad person. That's him. That's who he is. That's fine. And so I ended that relationship, and I was able to do it sort of carefully. And at that time I was having babies. And so it was really easy to sort of be like, oh, I'm having babies. I can't go to the meetings, you know. Meanwhile, I'm like meeting up with my great mentors talking about having babies. But being really discerning and like I would encourage anyone, and I think about this all the time because we're so conditioned to just take an advice. Like social media, you guys know so much more social media than I do, but we just take stuff in, right? And you just absorb it. And whether that's like social media or because someone of this stature says it, or just like not consciously absorbing stuff. Do you want the outcome and does it resonate deeply with you? And then stepping into those relationships.
Well, we must have had great prep calls because my next question was, Katie, do I want this person to outcome? When we spoke about it, I recalled for you all that I had a very similar experience with a very similar mentor who was invested in a wonderful person to this day, one of my best mentors, and mine was a more mixed bag. And what I came to realize is the same thing is I was widowed at a very young age. I had 2 little babies. And so for me, my life is family first. And I have a wonderful career that managed to balance both. But because of that family first, this mentor was the workaholic who didn't have a lot of time with family. And so there were so many things I learned from this person in the many years we worked together. But I maybe it took me some years and I finally said to myself, I don't aspire to be that person. So a lot of times a mentor is somebody you respect and you admire and you want to emulate. And you will find that there are mentors that are not going to be, you don't want your outcome. They're trying. It's great that they took an investment in you and an interest, but you have to be self-aware and understand your own authentic self and does it fit for you and take it from there. So now, Angie, I think you and I had a long discussion about formal, informal. Yeah. And how do people connect? How do the people here who have not yet had their mentor-mentee relationship, how does that happen? And maybe hear from you and others about that.
I mean, in similar ways, and I think a lot of the themes, but buying a cup of coffee for someone and just, being available, like asking, like, when could you possibly meet? Here are several dates, and just picking their brains. I think people love giving advice, right? And I think what you said too, though, being discerning. And just because you admire them, it might not be everything about them. Maybe it's something about their career. But I think asking someone for their time, buying lunch, buying coffee, and saying like, I would just like to pick your brain. And it's maybe like a preliminary tryout for if you want to give them a spot on your advisory board. But for me, I've never had a formal like mentor. I've had some excellent bosses. I've had some so-so bosses, but people that I admired, sometimes I would just ask, because most of the time too, like, it's, again, about energy and emotion. When you feel a connection, like that person is someone I just really, am like attracted to, not like that, but like, in like, I love their energy, I love their spirit of the way they lead or the way that they're running their company. But making it easy for them, go to where they are if they're super busy people, and don't give up just because. I know that I have oftentimes had to put off something for like a month before I get to meet someone, but I love when someone is curious about what I do. And also I love hearing about that person, because like you guys we all said, I learned so much from people just sharing about their ideas about their career path, all the technology stuff that I'm far behind, like just all the things. So it is a two-way street, and I think that don't be intimidated. Like I definitely don't have it all together. So I always like laugh when someone's like, oh, you're gonna make time for you. I'm like, yeah, because this is enjoyable. Like people love sharing, or at least most people love sharing about themselves. So I would say start by just asking people for coffee, asking for their time and just their advice. I think most people would say they like talking about themselves or giving advice, and kind of go from there. It's a tryout.
They do, and I can speak from the same kind of experience. I mean, at least in Manchester, where you may all go away. I hope you don't, because it's a really great place to be, to stay, work, and play. But people are willing to give you their time. I mean, I remember going through the Union Leader 40 Under 40 and just reaching out to people. I was lucky that I grew up here and I knew some people, but I didn't know a lot of people. And I would message people on LinkedIn and say, congratulations on getting 40 Under 40. You seem like you're doing great at XYZ or whatever it may be. Do you want, if you'd ever be open for a cup of coffee, let me know. And they come and they meet you. And so it's great to have the introduction and the connection. And then, places, like I said, I can only speak for here, but it becomes a really small big town, right? I mean, we go to networking events, you see the same people, start seeing the same people everywhere. And it's really fun to be a part of that community, and certainly joining things like Rotary clubs, my friend Natalie, and different networking opportunities let you cultivate some really great relationships. But people are willing to do that. And, again, you don't have to ask them for coffee and then get on a knee and ask them to be your mentor. I mean, make sure it's a good fit, but don't be scared to ask for time. And like I said, when I did formally ask some people to be on my, personal board of directors, two people who I have fabulous relationships with still did say no. They were very respectful about it. They thanked me. The people that I was reaching out to were happy that I was reaching out, and I'm not flattered, but excited to know that I see them in that light. And people were honest. One woman who I've known for years, she explained how she just didn't have the capacity. She was really involved in a lot around the city, and we had a great conversation about how she'd love to offer introductions or connections whenever she could, and it didn't hinder, did not harm our relationship at all. But it just allowed us to have a really great and honest conversation. And very similar with another woman. And so I encourage you guys to not be shy about that. It can be scary to reach out. But I don't know, from the receiving end, it's just a cup of coffee, right? And it's it can feel intimidating.
Why do you make it? No, but it's true, because I think we think people are so busy that they're not, but it's likely that people are intimidated to ask them. So you might be one of the only people that did ask. So yeah.
And I would say too, I think, as you get started in a career industry, it is so important to surround yourself with people from other industries. It's awesome. McLane has a mentorship program. One of my colleagues, Jocelyn, is here, and she just told me about one that's available to us at Impax that I didn't know about. So those opportunities are great. Obviously, networking at your corporation is hugely important, and wonderful. I encourage you to do that. But I also encourage you to connect with leaders in other industries and, in business. I mean, there's a lot of advice. We all are in very different, industries and businesses. And it sounds like a lot of the advice and, strategies that have worked for us, they're not exclusive to the particular industry or company that you're at. So I'd encourage you to diversify your network as much as you can.
And some of you will be fortunate, or perhaps are in a company where there are formal mentorship programs. And so you get assigned a mentor, you know, you know, formal mentor. Even in those companies, however, like at McLane, you know, the survey that I did before writing your guidebook, I spoke to about 30 people, associates, council, directors, senior directors. And even the ones with the formal said, yes, but I have this whole other cadre of people who I go to. You know, I go to so-and-so for this and so-and-so for this. And they look to them as an informal mentor, kind of what we hear the words organic, well, this is the person I gravitate to. So if you are in a company that perhaps doesn't have that, as we're hearing here, do not be afraid to reach out to someone who you may have met at a function here, you know, later on to say, hey, you know what, I've had it happen for me, like law students from UNH Law School will call me up after I've spoken to them, they'll say, hey, you know, I'd love to have coffee with you, just talk about your career and things. And people always, most always say yes, we may have a few no's. And relationship building, especially in New Hampshire, is like the, you know, the small big state is people know each other in 3 years. I grew up here. And I'm a senior person at McLane, senior woman, 30 years at McLane, 2 years shy of 70, which I can't believe, but so probably way older than you. But the reality is, so what I've done, and I was very shy in my younger years, like college years, it's like if I spoke up in a room, I would beat myself up for 2 weeks, like, oh my God, why did I say that? And now literally, I pinch it, like if I'm at a conference and they go, our speaker didn't show up on DEI, I'm like, how long is it? Half hour, okay. But I put in coming out of shell and the mentorship in relationships, like I remember as one example, which I've done numerous times, there used to be a former head of the chamber. I sat in one office on Elm Street and looked across and could practically look into her office. And I would go to events and I go, how do we not know each other? We're both businesswomen. So one day I just called her up and I said, hi, Robin, this is Linda. I'm the director of McLane Middleton. We don't know each other, but I don't know why we don't know each other. Why don't we get to know each other all lunch? So we got together for lunch. We had lunch at the time. So it was 18 years ago. We were both 50. And I said, you know, we talked about everything, work, life, children, interests. And I said, what is something you really would want to do right now that you aren't doing in your life? And she goes, you know what? I want to take tennis lessons. And I go, so you know what? Me too. So we had on Elm Street and walked over to the Y and we started tennis lessons. We took tennis lessons and we both started playing. So those are the types of things. In the world of mentor-mentee, we did learn from each other. The mentor-mentees is usually the experience and the less experience, but colleagues can be mentors too. Like I say, I look at Sara as both. And actually, Sara, that gets me into my next question.
Our tennis lessons, we took tennis lessons.
Yeah. My next question for you is, when we spoke, you discussed, you know what, Linda, I've always thought of myself as the mentee. And now I've been working a bit longer, and as a result of maybe some of the publicity of people saying, hey, you're speaking on this, you're now being asked to be a mentor. And could you speak to the dynamic that's going on?
Yes, no, it's exciting. And like I've, as you all heard, coached lacrosse, and I love that I'm on the board at MPAL, Manchester Police Athletic League. So I love being around, you know, younger people, and I do love being a coach. And as I mentioned, I do think that, you know, the difference between a coach and a mentor is the formality of it. And so in actually spreading the word about this event, I had a leadership Manchester colleague or friend reach out to me and ask if I would consider mentoring someone at his company. And it just was really eye-opening that, yeah, I guess I am getting older, right? But yes, I mean, I'm really excited about the opportunity. I've never been a formal mentor. And so I probably will be leaning on some of my mentors and how to best, you know, show up and, you know, and be in that role. But it is interesting as, you know, that shift kind of happens. And as I said this morning, I don't think that it, you know, obviously doesn't need to be mutually exclusive. You can't only be a mentee or a mentor. So I'm excited to sort of step into those shoes for folks. And to that, I'll just say the few of you that we've connected with to put this event on, I've been really impressed with. So thanks for your connections. You guys are already on the right path. And so I hope you stay in touch, be it in a formal way or not. But yes, it's exciting. So sure I'll be asking for that guidebook, Linda, that you're.
The wealth of information, and so many wonderful articles on mentoring, and one of them was what makes a mentor. And it says, to gauge your mentoring skills, jot down the characteristics of your own best mentor. And then they gave ideas of like makes you feel secure enough to take risks, interacts with you in a way that makes you want to become better. Is someone absolutely credible whose integrity transcends the message, be it positive or negative. So it had some thoughts on what makes a good
Love
mentor.
that.
Yes, so I'd be happy to share that. I think hopefully I can get that right. So, and Laura, you and I spoke as well, and I don't know if you covered it already, but you talked about, they all don't work out. Not every situation works out. And did you care to elaborate on that?
I think you get to a certain point in your career and you have stories about things that went well and things that didn't go well. Probably the place where sometimes the bad things teach you as much as the good things. So you probably are learning that already. And one of the things that I learned, interactions I learned a lot from, was with a woman whom I reached out to in order to get support for a project I was working on. I wasn't asking her to be my mentor per se, but I was asking her to help me with a project for an organization that we both cared deeply about. She was on the board and I had been hired to do work for them as a consultant. And it was an organization that was in transition and they needed some support from a communications professional, but I needed support from her as a board member to help me to meet some people who cared about the organization, to learn from them so that we could build some messaging that would resonate best with our donors and our supporters. And when I approached her and I said, gosh, you're so well known in the community and you're a big part of this organization, could you please help me? I did, again, asking as a consultant, not as a potential mentee, help me to think about whom we should speak with. And she said to me, no, I'm not going to help you. She said, no one ever helped me in my career. No one helped me build these relationships that I have in the community. Nobody helped me to learn how to talk to some of these people. No one helped me to get this board position. I'm not going to help you because no one helped me. So should you ever encounter a situation like that, I know that you would all know to run very quickly in the opposite direction, which I did. But I've never had anyone ever in a long career say anything like that to me. More often than not, people are delighted to hear from you, even when they don't have time to give in a formal relationship. Like Sarah, I also take the insert for 40 under 40, and I still now reach out to people who won that award because I was a recipient of the award, and I feel a certain affinity for people that I know have achieved that. But also, I read the little business blurbs in the newspaper. I still read a paper newspaper, 2 of 3 of them a day. But I read the little business blurb, and when I see somebody in New Hampshire Business Review or Business Picture Magazine has gotten a promotion or achieved something, if it's somebody that I want to connect with, I might send a note. Because in a couple months, when I come around to it again and have time, I might want to call that person or email that person to ask for advice or to ask for a connection to someone in the community. And I feel like I've done a little bit of spade work, but it's got to be genuine. You have to really be genuinely interested in other people to be a good mentor and to be a good mentee. It doesn't always work out, but when it does, it is a very sweet thing that yields a lot of great stuff.
So hopefully something like that will be the rare minority, and I wish for none of them in this to ever experience that, because most of our experiences is that people are very kind of flattered and humbled that you would even reach out to them no matter where they are in their career. Now, one thing we did not talk about, what I love sitting in this room is that it's really quite a gender dynamic here, a balance. And for all of us happen to be women talking about mentor-mentee relationships. What is the role of men? What has been the role of men in your mentor-mentee relationships? Or women?
Well, I can start by saying I came up in my field at a time when there were fewer women in leadership positions. And so early on in my career, most of my mentors in a formal way were men. Most of them were men who were either at the crest or the wane of their careers, who had time for me, who were interested in teaching me something or offering me advice. But more often than not, they were great at introducing me to other people. One of the best mentors I ever had was a boss of mine. And he actually, what he did for me is that he got me a mentor, and it was within our organization. He came to me one day. People I work with now would find it hard to believe that there was a time in my career when my boss said to me, "You are all carrot and no stick." And by that, he meant you don't speak with authority, you don't come across as having conviction of your ideas, and you have good ideas and you could deliver them better. And so he said, I want you to start having tea every week with a woman who is in a leadership position in the organization. I'm going to set it up so that you guys have tea once a week. And what that really meant was, it was my chance to take this very busy professional's time, sit with her. We literally drank tea together and we talked for an hour and a half or 2 hours once a week. And she would reflect back to me, in the staff meeting last week, you had this really good idea, but when you presented it, you ended by saying, I mean, if that's something that you'd be interested in. Don't ever say that. Don't do it. And here I am, the communications professional, but you learn as you go along. And his willingness to invest her time in me and her willingness to invest her expertise in me and to give that gift to me, that was probably the most extraordinary thing that's happened to me in my career. Neither of them were communications people. Her background was in banking, but she was smart and generous and really committed to helping me be my best self in that job. It was a good investment for them too.
Yeah, we've been talking today primarily about, career development, but if I got emotional and asked who was your greatest mentor in, for your life, person's your, perhaps many of us would say a mother or our father or someone like that. But going back to the professional, in my career, I've had a man and a woman. So my college professor, who was a judge and a lawyer, took an interest in me in college and resulted after college. She just would, let's go together for dinner. So throughout my career until her death, she and I would periodically get together for dinner. And she was more the person who helped me, like as a woman in a legal industry, making my way both professionally and personally, like family, all those types of things. The male mentor, the strongest one in my career, has been a male, was the professional career development, who wanted to mentor me about my leadership skill set and the like, and the balance between those two were very helpful to me. Now, how about some of the rest of you?
I would say that there's 2 points I'd love to make. One, and the first is that when you offered that prompt of who potentially is your most life impacting mentor, I think back to my senior year in college and my advisor. So at that time I was very overachieving, president of my class, 4.0, perfectionist, super conditioned to do that. And I was giving the commencement address because I was the class president. And I walked into his office hours and sat down really proud of myself with my draft of my speech. And to be clear, this wasn't about ego for me. It was literally about being conditioned to be a good girl and please other people and make people happy. So I stayed off the radar. And he read my draft and he said, this is great, but what I want to talk to you about is the fact that you are a perfectionist and it's going to ruin your life. And I just sat stunned. Now he had room to say this to me because we'd gotten close in there. So that's going to be my second point. It's about vulnerability in relationships. But he could say this to me because I knew it was a safe space. And he did it beautifully because it really was a safe space. And that man held an intervention that to this day has completely impacted my life. I don't know how much time he saved me. I don't know how much heartache he saved me. I don't know how many bad situations he proactively kept me out of, but he saw that I was perfectionist, people pleasing, pretty frantic, and he intervened. And it literally changed my life. I still think about it today. And so I'm so grateful, we met my sophomore year in a Shakespeare class and I was just open to him and being me. So that was really kind of amazing. And the other thing I just wanted to honor is we're giving advice, we're pretty extroverted women. And so I want to honor that for introverts, or my best friend is neurodivergent. My oldest son is deaf. To get my oldest son, who's 11, to talk, so he wears cochlear implants, to talk to someone his age is like pulling teeth. Because when he speaks to an adult, he can read their lips, their language is predictable, He can pull in like acoustics and context clues more effectively and hear. He is terrified to miss a direction, to miss feedback. No matter, and if you can tell, like I'm doing the work on this with him, like I'm the emotional leader in his world and we're working on healing this, but that's his thing. If you met Jack, he is brilliant, he's smart, he's on student council, like he's just like this cool effervescent kid. He's totally intimidated with his peers, if he doesn't know his peers, because their language is not predictable. They don't understand how to speak to him so he can read their lips. And if he's afraid if he misses something, they won't be kind and you know, offer grace and repeat that. And so I just want to honor that. You might be sitting here thinking, I'm not this extroverted, bubbly female. And I just want to bottom line this for all of us and say, mentorship is about building relationships and it's about vulnerability. And you can be introverted or quiet, or my best friend is neurodivergent and can't make a phone call to save her life. You can work within what you've got to work within by observing people and feeling, is this a connection for me? Is this something that resonates with me? And there's nothing wrong with that quiet email to one person. You don't have to go to a networking event. You are allowed to send a note. You are allowed, you know, when my son Jack is being coached by his hockey coaches, I'll encourage him, like, loop back to your coach when there's a quiet moment and build that relationship. So I just want to honor that you may not be like us, but it doesn't mean this can't be effective for you. And this boils down to relationships, and the more authentic and vulnerable you are, the more you can impact someone else, but frankly, your life can be changed and altered.
Did I tell you we did a treat? So at this point, what we'd like to do is open it up to, hopefully this has turned into some questions that you all may have. And we're open to hear what your question might be. So the panelists, yes.
So I want to let students answer questions. I want to say this very quickly, but you guys have been talking about it. Some things that I know, like Stay Work Play, like Leadership Manchester, and Young Professionals. Can you guys give a little snippet? Because I think those are really great avenues to meet people outside of the campus.
So yeah, on my part, I was really involved with the Conquer Young Professionals and chaired the board. It was originally just about meeting people. A lot has changed in the past even 10 years to where there was not a lot of young people in Concord. And so that was one way to meet people. And again, I wasn't necessarily there to make business connections. And in some ways, I hate that. I hate leading with what I do because I don't think that is who I am. But it's really, that opened the door to a lot of personal friendships, and it has frankly been very valuable to me in my professional work, because we all kind of grew up together in the professional world. And so now we're leading our own organization. So we were once the people working for the big bosses, and now we get to be the boss. And so I entered into that space looking for social connections, because it's hard to meet young people in a very old state of New Hampshire. But it has been really valuable on both sides. So I certainly would encourage folks to check it out. And I know, you know, for the Conquer Professionals, and I know for Stay Work Play, they definitely encourage college students to attend, because you're the next one's coming up, and so
We might want to stay here.
yeah. So I definitely encourage you. I would hope that you would be welcome in any space, and that was one of the things. I was an outgoing person that if I saw a new person, I would just like, hello. Like, where are you from? Please just stay and hang out. And it's really rewarding to be able to help your fellow people, help them get an introduction. And even though it's not a formal mentorship, but it's like you have friends that you can introduce to the people that they want to meet too. So definitely encourage that. I mean, you've been involved with the Manchester Professionals, right?
Yeah, which we've done a lot with Conquer Young Professionals too, but I mean,
That's how we met.
right, and there are probably a lot of studies that prove this, but I'm sure that you don't need to read one to understand that waking up, going to work, and going home every day, 5 days a week isn't totally, I mean, I hope you love your job and where you work and those people, but there's more to life than that. And so there's been a lot of efforts in the Manchester area, but statewide, with Stay Work Play, about, you know, getting young people to connect outside of work. And sometimes it's professional connections, like you were saying, but our state is, you know, is really great, and there's a lot to offer young people. I had the benefit of growing up here, so I sort of knew that when I moved back. But when I was living, I moved away to Boulder and then was living in Nashville, and I never thought I would move back here. My mom's here today, and I was lucky to have family that did bring me back. But I was seeing it with new eyes, and I was really, really surprised and excited to see all that's going on for young people here. The Rex Theater, is pretty new still. The Palace Theater has been around forever, but does great stuff. There was a Young Professionals networking event at the Shaskeen for a comedy night. There's some really, really great people doing fun stuff here, and we're trying to be more open about it, but yeah, I would definitely
And
encourage
what
you to
about
look into
working
it.
with one of the chamber leadership programs? Can you explain a little bit about how to get in and what's involved?
I think we've all been through did we all graduate from Concord Leadership?
I have not, that's the one thing I haven't done, because I feel like it does, because small state, small community, it's interesting how much you get, if you get involved and you meet somebody and then they know somebody, but that's the only program I haven't done, because I just feel like I don't want to take a spot from someone else's experiencing it all, because they get to do really fun things.
So my advice about that, so I went through Leadership Greater Manchester and ended up serving on that committee for a lot of years. So I'm trying to think of where I worked when I did that. Oh, interestingly, I was not the chosen person in my organization to do that. The organization put forth someone else. And then it was a mentor who put me in, and I got in, and it was a whole big thing in my organization because I shouldn't have gotten in and the other person should have. But I got it. But so here's what I would suggest is, and maybe this cuts to my introverts too, like you're working in an organization and there's a leadership program or a training program. You may not be super confident about walking into a networking program, but asking your supervisor, could you nominate me for this? So here's what's great about like a leadership program. Once you get in, you're expected, that seat is for you. Then you're expected to share. Then you're expected to be, authentic and connect with people. It's a standing invitation to be who you are. And if that helps you, then seize that opportunity. But within your organizations, or if, as I did, like a mentor and I talked about me being nominated for the leadership program, you have every right to ask, could I be in that? And maybe you'll get the answer of like, hey, we've got a couple people in the pipeline, but in 2 years, yes. And just keep following up on it.
And then the leadership program exposes you to different facets of the community, be it education or business or the arts and all different. So it's usually once a month and you have sessions, so you come to know your community.
Right.
And then statewide, there's a Leadership in Hampshire, which does a similar thing. Connie and I were in the same class. So we had many overnights together, we carpooled together, and we get to know the state on that level. So how about any other questions about mentor and Mentee? Yes.
Hi, I'm Heidi Darren. Hi. My question is, how has being a mentor helped you to lean into your authentic self?
Great question.
Who wants to answer?
I think for me, it's just, I feel like in the last 5 years, I am more myself than ever, and it feels awesome and it's like when younger folks come up and they say that they are like, we like you, we think you're awesome, tell us everything, how you got to where you are, and then I break it to them and I'm like, I had no plan whatsoever. But I just feel like when you're authentic and you allow yourself to be open and people tell you like that they like that about you. So I think that it's so hard because we condition ourselves, especially women, even though gentlemen, I know you have the same pressure and it's probably increasing, but for women, we have a lot of pressure to look the right way, to dress the right way, to be at the right weight. And so we're taking in so much from the outside. So when you're able to reveal your real self and people seem to like it, that has been the most rewarding part about working with younger people who want to know about my professional path. And so yeah, that has been the most rewarding part, is because I'm like, oh, okay, they want to know about who I am. So I'm going to keep doing this. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of untraining, but I think that's the most rewarding part about that relationship, because And also just seeing yourself through their eyes, because a lot of times we're super hard on ourselves. I know I am. I literally do that thing where I'm like, I said that thing and that was super stupid. Like, I hope that no one ever remembers it, but I will remember it till the day I die. So it's really great when you can see yourself through other people's eyes, because I think we're our hardest critics, but when other people are authentically telling you and giving you feedback, that's really awesome.
Anyone else?
And I think that I knew for a long time that I was, hi Heidi, that I was a natural cheerleader. But one of the things that I learned through mentoring others is the power of the pride that I feel in other people's accomplishments. So every day I'm kind of pushing myself, sometimes harder than I should, sometimes not hard enough. But the ability to see other people's success and to just feel even just a very small piece of it, it helps me to recognize that I'm a good cheerleader and that I'm a supporter. But there is just a real point of pride in seeing people that I've had really the honor to work with achieve things that they set for themselves, not what I want to see them do. And I think that's authentically who I am.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
So it's evident that obviously like mentors and mentee relationships are, useful within every stage of life. And speaking from like a senior standpoint or like recent grads, how can we evolve our mentor relationships into a sponsor? Because we want to get into that next gig and like kind of evolve that relationship into something more.
That's a really great question.
And when we're like, where's a good?
I know, I'm like, what do you think? That's what you said, you don't have an answer. No, you mean like a sponsor, as in maybe someone makes a phone call for you, or is a recommendation, or helps you find a.
Yeah, so like obviously like mentors, they help you find out your specialties and skills and helps you with giving advice and stuff, but having a sponsor like invest in you and going out and advocating for you or getting like a good gig for you, like that's something that might help us in getting into the field.
I mean, the first thing I would say is ask, and that sounds really trite, and it's not, but that really deep kind of here's how I would do it. I would do it in a self-reflective way, like, hey, I'm feeling nervous about this, or I've got my first interview coming up and I'm really nervous, I'm going to do XYZ, or my dream is to go there. Can you help me with that? So that like in asking, but then, perhaps I'd modify that word to invitation, inviting that current mentor to evolve with you. I'd love for you to have a place in my world. Here's where I could use your skill set. Here's where I'm nervous. Here's where, I need some assistance. And then if it becomes really clear that a phone call, and I mean, I'm sure I've done this in my life, where like a phone call from so-and-so matters and can change the trajectory of your world. That is where that courage comes in. And asking that from like kind of a gracious perspective is really important. But to me, this is about a relationship. And so if you have someone you're thinking of, like, I want this person to pivot with me into the start of my career, ask them and explain why that person is so important. Give them ideas about what you might want from them, and then invite them to sort of have that seat next to you.
And then go in with the appreciation,
For sure.
Yeah, thank you notes can go a long way.
So they're so unusual now.
Yeah, and very often, again, I love New Hampshire for like what I call the smallness, but the greatness of it. I have lived here my entire life. I had opportunities to live elsewhere, chose to stay. And it is because it's like, okay, I know Connie, I know too, and I know these ladies. And then you say, well, I don't think I can help, but let me see if I can find someone who can.
Yeah.
So, but
Right.
by asking the question to say, and can you or do you know of someone who can help me? This is what I'm aspiring to. And it may not be my circle. Like I kind of know my legal circles, people will call me up and say, I need this. And I go, well, that's not me, but let me get you there. Like I have one right now where it's not our firm's expertise, but I'm like, I know how hard it is to find a lawyer. Let me make my connections to find a connection for you. It's not quite what you're asking, but it's that same kind of like, ask the question, and so many people are invested, especially, if you're gracious in the ask to say, I would love to help you, let me see if I can. Now, there was another hand up behind that, yes.
Hi, Jocelyn. So from the perspective of either being a mentor or mentee, someone needs to set the direction of that relationship. Which do you think is more effective, the mentor guiding the mentee or the mentee going to the mentor and saying, this is what I want, how do I achieve that?
I think second.
Yeah, I think
second?
my experience was the second. And again, I think that the way that I approached the board of directors was that they were people that I had personal connections with and that I had, friendships with or or knew, and I went to them and said, listen, I'm, starting my career and building a business. This is what I'm looking to do. I respect you. I think you're successful. I would love your insight and I'd love for you to have a seat at this table. And then in that more formal presentation, I was able to be a little bit more articulate, but I mean, I think there are a lot of different ways to get matched up with mentors. Mine has been more the organic way. So the second is what I've had experience with and success with.
And you could also give your mentor permission, like what I would do if I was getting into a mentor relationship right now, is I would say, here's what I'm looking for. And then like one of my favorite things to say, because I have 4 coaches at any time evolving in my worlds, like a business coach, personal coach, I'll say, you have standing permission to tell me anything you need to tell me, to tell me anything you observe about me. And I will take that in. And so usually in that relationship, all you need to do is just sort of like say like, I'm down with doing truth, and that person's just going to give it to you. And then you can lean in and be more directive about what you need to.
And in my book that I'm writing in my office, it addresses that and the importance of the mentee initiating it. And in the pieces I have so far is mentees, ask yourselves first the following questions. What do I want to get out of the mentorship relationship? What professional goals do I want to achieve? And what personal goals do you want to achieve? And then when you ask yourself and process that, then when you connect with your mentor, discuss your needs and hopes of the mentorship relationship and what you are looking for from the mentorship with that person, so that you inform that. Because a mentor at McLane would try to say you should have a mentorship mindset with every attorney in the office, number one. But then you have the formal and the informal. And how do you really give value to the time that you spend in that relationship? So that's a great question.
I had heard, I forget who it was exactly, someone had said that someone had approached them and said that I want to be your mentor. So then going forward with that type of,
Yes.
that type of relationship, do they then set it, or you be
Right.
my mentor, but this is what I want.
So, and that's kind of where that was a tough one, because there was some dynamics in that where it wasn't the best. And so I had to sort of accept it.
Yeah.
But right, so his view was very top down. His view was very like, I'm in charge. So it was about his ego.
Yeah.
It was totally about his ego, right? And so by meeting 3, I figured it out. And then, segued myself out. But that I would say is like atypical. I think someone you're connecting with it's gonna feel far more relational and far more like that person's gonna say to you, what do you want? I still would give them standing permission to tell me the truth about anything, because that's how I am, but yeah.
So before I pitch it back to Hannah, I just wanted to give you each an opportunity if there was anything else that has been triggered by tonight's conversation that you would like to share with the people who are here. Maybe just starting from Angie.
I think I just would double up on for being discerning. I've certainly had bosses and pseudo mentors that have given not great advice. But I think looking back, at the time I was really young. So I just was like, yes, what you're telling me, I'm gonna absorb it. So if it feels like this person, if it's not who you authentically are, that could be a sign that that person is not the right mentor for you. And like every relationship, it might run its course as well. So certainly don't, I certainly wouldn't put anyone on a pedestal and think that they are going to give you every piece of advice that is perfect. And so just also, reflect on things as well. And I love that you have 4. I think that that's great. Have multiple people from different backgrounds that might be able to advise you in different ways. And that's valuable. And I have a lot of those people in my life, and I go to different people to get their feedback. And then I make up my own mind about what is best for me.
I commend you all for coming out. I think this is amazing. The opportunity to connect with people who are in the quote real world. I would say do that as much as you can, especially as you're getting close to graduating. There are a lot of, like we said, professionals networks and different networking opportunities and just opportunities to connect, in Manchester, even if you're not here forever. So I would just encourage you to be curious and, to try new things, but also, be yourself and do things that you enjoy. That was some good advice I got early on too. Don't just join something for the sake of joining it. Do things that you're interested in, and you'll meet people that have similar interests, not necessarily in the same, industry or career. But you'll connect more authentically when you're doing things that you enjoy. So keep being curious and putting yourself out there.
Yeah. So I have like core values that I live my life according to. And one of them is courage. And I don't know why, like I feel the need to sort of underscore this, but I do, maybe I feel like some of the people in the audience, but it takes a lot of courage to build a relationship and to lean in. It takes a lot of courage to allow someone to invest in you and to invest in another person. And the best parts of my life so far have come from people who sometimes snuck up on me, and these like slow build, honest, authentic investing relationships. And I've usually been rewarded when I've been appropriately vulnerable. I'm not saying you need to be vulnerable in every circumstance, but when I've leaned in and been appropriately vulnerable, something felt safe, usually those people changed my life. And I do think that's like the meaning of life. And so I think we can give you guidance and guidelines, and there's going to be structures and offices, but life is about courage. And when you feel with conviction that this is a relationship you want to build or lean into, or that person has something, you're not sure what it is, have the courage to reach out. It's literally how your life has changed.
Sara?
It's hard to add to all of that, but I think that you will learn that there are some things in your life that sap your energy, just like there are some people that sap your energy, and you are going to meet people in the professional space who refill that well and who make you feel excited and energized about what's to come for you. And so find those people with whom there's that energetic connection. And I think for mentors and for mentees, a real commitment to co-learning. I mean, I learned a great deal today by being here. I know I'll learn more during our networking time together. Being willing to learn along with your mentee as a mentor is incredibly rewarding, but it also makes you better at whatever you're doing. So.
And my closing thought is maybe especially for the men in the audience is through my years, I noticed it's sort of like the woman gravitates to the women and the men gravitate to the men. And the best mentors in my office are like men who are invested in as much in helping to mentor women as well as men, and women who are invested as much into mentoring men as well as women. And so I consciously had to say, it's more comfortable to talk about it, just that maybe this is what happened, whatever, those are the women, but to say, I need to develop a way to engage with men in my office to be a mentor source for them to the extent it's formal or informal, and that they can learn from each other. So I would say, don't hesitate to reach out to a woman in an organization, to a woman in your world to say, I'd love to have lunch with you and talk about a career. So I want to end my part by just to say thank you to the task force, Hannah, Dina, Connie, wonderful task force putting this entire series together. And as you saw, the amazing ladies who were willing to come here, be authentic, and share themselves about mentee. So let's have a round of applause.